Okay, well, I am Alec Cizak, and I'm here today with Rebecca Jones-Howe. And Rebecca is a writer who writes, I think, very interesting fiction, and we'll talk about that for sure. Um, Rebecca is one of the only writers to ever get a present tense fiction story published in Pulp Modern. So I don't know what the secret is there, but because I'm normally very mean about that. But, we'll see if that comes up. First of all, Rebecca, how are you doing?
Oh, not too bad.
Yeah,
Surviving.
you're in Canada, is that correct?
Yes, yes. So things aren't as crazy up here, but
Oh, why are they crazy in Canada?
because of COVID.
Oh, COVID.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Is
got a pretty good dump of snow today though, which isn't normal for British Columbia, but yeah.
really
Yeah, like
what?
10 centimeters, so what, like 5 inches, something like that today. Yeah.
Wow. You posted the thing a few weeks ago of the video of Tucker Carlson um, pronouncing Ottawa very strangely.
Oh yeah, he called it Ottawa.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was making fun of AOC. I don't know the context, but I just thought that was funny.
It is. It's very strange because I'm sure he's somebody who prides himself on being smart, and
Oh
I've
yeah.
never pronounced Ottawa.
Yeah, but like anytime Canada's referenced in any context in like American news, it turns into like a big thing up here. Be like, "Oh, the
Oh.
Americans noticed us." Like,
Well, if you all played football on a field that's the proper size and didn't have a 1 point play, we might pay more attention to Canada, but we just can't take you seriously. Canadian football has 3 downs. It doesn't have 4 downs.
oh, does it? Yeah, I don't follow football.
Yeah,
Not much. I mean, like it's
yeah,
obviously it's like hockey up here. Um, and then like
right.
the national sport is actually lacrosse for some reason. I don't know
Really?
why. Yeah, I don't know anybody who watches lacrosse, but I'm particularly a curling fan, which is considered another very Canadian sport. But yeah.
Oh, I do like curling. Uh,
Hmm.
Yeah, every time there's Olympics, my wife and I watch the curling.
It's a really interesting game. Like it's like a weird game, but once you really get into it, it's like it's really fun to follow.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let me go ahead and ask the first question here. So you often go there, quote unquote, in your fiction, meaning you aren't afraid to take the reader places that many writers today seem too hesitant to. I would put it in these terms. There are writers who flinch and writers who don't flinch. You are a writer who does not flinch. What do you think it is that compels one writer to go in a dangerous direction, as you often have, versus a writer who plays it safe?
I don't know. I just like telling stories like the things that I think about in my head or kind of I guess a lot of times the things that I write about, I like to write about politics or social issues and things like that and try to, put a spin on it or think about it in a different way. So like me, my mission is to try to I guess discuss politics or social issues, which are really very triggering topics for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And I think fiction is just an easier way to discuss it than it is to just talk about that issue specifically. So I thinking about my writing in those terms, to me, it makes it easier to write like some, I guess, pretty direct things or pretty obscure things. And that's just kind of like my way of dissecting things.
Well, your story in Pulp Modern, I believe, had rape or a sexual assault in it,
Yeah.
something like that. It's been a while since I read. That was in issue 4 of the first volume, which was a very strange issue. Um, But I think, though, even writers who want to explore social issues like that won't be as forthright about it, I think, as you are. That's
Hmm.
what I'm really kind of getting at. Let me ask you this, do you set out ahead of time? Do you say, I'm going to write a story about this issue, or does a story come to you and then you decide, oh, this could be a commentary on this or this? You see what I'm
Um,
saying?
Sometimes it's one way, sometimes it's more the other. The story in Pulp Modern Better Places was more like just kind of putting a spin on like a zombie story and making it very kind of female centric on the sort of things that I guess women in that sort of situation and have been projected or portrayed in movies. Like I kind of think of like 28 Days Later, the ending of that, how the women were kind of used in that, or at least the way I think it was a military man. It's been a while since I've seen that movie, but kind of just looking at those kind of contexts and sort of the representation that I guess women sort of have in that hypothetical situation. Um, I don't know. It's kind of, I don't try to write about it specifically. I think, especially in terms now with the way people see rape and stuff in fiction, I definitely wouldn't write that story now. But back
Oh,
then,
really?
yeah, I kind of, it's really tough just with the way, times have changed with the Me Too movement and all that kind of thing. It would be a more difficult subject to tackle, I think.
But since you're a woman, aren't you allowed to? Like, I know a man could not write that story.
Yeah. I don't see, it's hard to know like what one person can really get away with. And, I have featured rape in my fiction in the past and, you know, um I guess some women still see it as problematic, even me as a woman. Like it's just it's kind of touch and go. It's kind of story on story. So it's hard to really say like this is an example of rape in fiction that works because of XXX versus this is a reason why it doesn't. Like it's still, even for me now, it's kind of having, read the thought pieces and stuff that I have, like I've kind of rethought things, but I don't know. It's really hard to say.
Yeah, this is kind of exactly what I'm getting at, though. So I remember many years ago, I read an interview with Scorsese, Martin Scorsese, and he said the reason that like the violence in Casino and Goodfellas was so brutal, right, was to show how disgusting violence is. And so I just wonder if writers are pulling back on tough subjects, are we doing that subject the justice that it deserves, that it needs? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that that's a worthy conversation to have because I do think that a lot of authors do pull away from those kind of subjects now, just um because I don't want to talk about, triggers and stuff like that, but I think, just the way certain stories, I suppose, can be presented can kind of come off as just being about violence against women as opposed to looking at how that violence affects women. And so, maybe a man couldn't write Better Places because they wouldn't come from that, understanding of like how it affects them. But men suffer from sexual violence too. So I think they could understand it. A man could write a rape story and I, write the same sort of way that I do. It's just it's so touch and go and it's so iffy. Like there's women who have read my short story collection and just trashed it because they thought that it represented women poorly. So again, it's all subjective, right?
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. Are you talking about Vile Men?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Um, so let's mention it now. Vile Men. That's Rebecca's collection of short stories. Have you had any books come out since then, or?
Unfortunately, not. No, no.
Oh,
I kind of, took a break. I did write a novel that I'm shopping right now, but I mean, that's the whole. It's in the whole query process, which is no fun. But we're working on it.
okay. Is that the one you said a while ago? You said men might be upset by.
Oh yeah, it totally
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Well, I don't think you should worry about that. If we start worrying about, people being upset, just imagine all the books that wouldn't have been written if people
Oh
worried
yeah.
about readers getting upset, you know. Okay. Well, that's very fascinating. Uh, okay, I don't know how you're going to deal with this. There are some who suggest the world has gotten to such a state that there is no room for fiction, that in a world as strange as ours, inventing strangeness isn't useful. What would you say to these people? What is the function of fiction in the 21st century?
I would say it's kind of to show who people are. I think the things people write about are things that we all think about somewhere deep down and buried. And I don't know, like for me, for instance, when I pick up, I enjoy thrillers and I enjoy kind of like weird stuff. Like I've got VC Andrews. This is all VC Andrews books, which are like trash, horrible stuff. But I don't know. There's something really because like the VC like Flowers in the Attic was the incest where the siblings bone in the attic because they're like locked up in there. And so there's something about like these books that women in their teens and like still now just love. And even though they're poorly written and it's the same story every time, there's just something about it that people just find thrilling and enjoy reading about. And so I think that that's what fiction is for, is to just kind of explore those recesses of your brain in a safe way because it's fiction, right? And so, everybody has those deep thoughts in there. And so that's what fiction is for. And a lot of it is stuff that, you can't put in a movie. Or if they did, it would be the crappy Lifetime version of the movie. It doesn't really explore like the depth of, humanity, I guess.
Well, that's good. And again, it's you said it's safe. So
Hmm.
so we should be able to really dig deep into the cellar of the mind and bring
Yeah.
out monsters and
Hmm.
put them on the page.
Yeah. And it's,
Right.
every time I pick up a thriller and it's just kind of like your safe average thriller, like, oh, the husband was the killer. And it's the same convoluted story, but I mean, that's what I really enjoyed about Gone Girl was it kind of explored like the depths of like marriage and those kind of like weird deep-seated thoughts that spouses have in marriages. Like we all have them, they're all there. And so that's kind of what I really like about Gone Girl and Gillian Flynn's work in general is that she really does get into those recesses, but still puts it in the plot of like just a great story. So you get a little bit of the trash with a little bit of like the, deep context and then the thrill. Like it's all there.
How has writing gone for you during the time of COVID? What new challenges has this pandemic brought on, and how are you dealing with them?
It's been tough. I like because I live in Canada, like I had a baby last April, and so when COVID hit, I was kind of in the last few months of my maternity leave because we get a year off. And so, things were pretty good because I was just doing the whole stay at home mom thing. So I would stay up late at night. I was doing Patreon at the time, so I was trying to write a short story every month. And so it was going really well, but then COVID hit and I started writing COVID based stories because it was just an easy way for me to kind of, I guess, process it and, express my angst about it and everything. But then, once summer hit and the whole like Black Lives Matter protests started happening, and I'd be up every night watching like live footage of the protests, and it was just that just shut me right down. So I kind of eventually had to stop writing for a little bit, but I have still been producing work. Most of it has been set in COVID times, just because I think, we're in a really pivotal moment in history, I think, and so it's worth writing fiction set as a primary source, right? Like fiction set in the time when, stuff is crazy. So I'm really trying to write as much like COVID stuff as I can.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But obviously, like, the US election's been distracting. There's so many things that have been distracting. So kind of have to give myself a break if I really don't feel like writing. But there'll be a week or so I'll end up, churning out 1,000 words a night. So it's not all bad.
You said something that I think a lot of Americans, particularly women in America, might be a little bit confused about. You said you get a year maternity leave?
Yeah. So when you have a kid in Canada,
Hmm.
typically your workplace, like you get a year off from work and then you get it's paid leave. If your spouse wants to take half of that and you take half, so you'll take half a year and your spouse can take half a year. Or you can take both of it together and then you get 6 months off work.
And
And
how does this happen?
you just get money. The government pays. Well, your workplace, I think, yeah, it's the government. See, I don't even know. This stuff we just take it for granted.
Huh. I, that's kind of mind blowing because I don't know what the rules are here, but I know they don't give anybody a year off here.
Yeah,
And
you if you have a good job, you get like 2 weeks, I think, right? But that's only if you got like a good job. Which is
I don't know.
that's just insane. How are you supposed to have a newborn baby and then go back to work? Like how the hell are you supposed to do that?
Yeah, well, my wife is China, she's from China, and she
Mhm.
said there just the first month after the baby's born, the mother is just with the baby the whole time. Like there's nobody really bothers her.
Yeah.
Um, and then I'll have to ask her again, but I know they get a significant amount of time away from work. Uh,
Yeah.
they're not penalized for it. Um, that's, I really don't want to wander off into a conversation about healthcare.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we always hear in the United States is the socialized medicine in Canada, whatever you want to call it, the healthcare system in Canada. They
Hmm.
call it socialized medicine here. The opponents of socialized medicine say you can't get in to see a doctor within like 6 months or something. They make up all these stories about how terrible it is. And I was just wondering if just briefly you could maybe clarify how terrible is having things like 12 months off for maternity leave.
Oh, it's so bad. It's awful. I spend all day with my kids. Um, I'm a type 1 diabetic too, so I think, I can say a lot in regards to this. Like, I'm not broke. I don't worry about, how I'm going to pay for my insulin. Um, but, with the doctor thing about the wait times, that kind of is based on, your area, your regional area. Like my city, for instance, has a shortage of doctors. So it can be kind of hard to find a doctor, but then there's other cities, an hour away and it's easy. You just find a doctor, no problem. And you go in if you're sick and you get your prescriptions and you don't pay anything. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, no, what was your question?
Well, one of the things they tried to say when they passed Obamacare here is they said that there'll be death panels, and if you're a certain age and it looks like um, healthcare is not going to save you, like let's say the doctor says you have 6 months to live, do they just stop giving you healthcare? They're just like, that's 6 months, you know,
No.
go ahead and ride off into the sunset.
I just don't. It's crazy. Just listening to the arguments, like in the debates and stuff, especially when they talk about, oh, you get to choose your healthcare provider. Like, you can still choose your doctor in Canada. Like, you can you can look up your doctors, like look them up online because there's websites for that. Pick which one you want, and like for me, I needed a specialized obstetrician because I'm type 1 diabetic. So when I got pregnant, like you have to get monitored like consistently. And so, I looked up which doctor I wanted and I told my general physician, like, this is a doctor I would prefer. And then they just send the referral and you get in. Like, you know, I needed it. It wasn't like there was a wait time because I'm a type 1 diabetic. Like it's a high risk thing. Like I didn't have to wait. They send you in. And yeah, like you don't have to pay anything. I don't it's crazy the stuff that, you know, they argue about, even the Democrats, the stuff that they argue about in the debates, like it's just absolutely absurd to me that you guys are arguing about keeping your insurance. Why would you want to pay? It's basically a scam. Like to me.
Well, it's one of the things that fuels when people talk about late stage capitalism, which I think is a
Oh
silly
yeah.
term, um, because it because of I think globalization. I think that capitalism has won, but I think that the turning healthcare into a material item is a byproduct of capitalism. I'm not an anti-capitalist person, but that is the hazard of capitalism.
Yeah. It's just gross because even Joe Biden was saying it's like every American has the right to affordable health care. I'm like, can't they just have the right to health care? Like, shouldn't that be the right? Why does it need to be affordable? Like, it should be health care.
Well, the argument I make is we have we pay taxes for police service, we pay taxes for fire service, we pay taxes for somebody to come pick up the garbage. Most places, some places they privatize that. But the point is, you know, fire and police are supposed to be there for your safety, which I think is part of your health. Therefore, why wouldn't medicine be
Yeah,
also?
exactly. Or if you need to call an ambulance, why do you have to pay for it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. I've had several episodes with ambulances, and yes, it's very expensive.
Yeah. I've always seen like, fire, police, ambulance is kind of like the trio of like people who are supposed to help you. So it's just funny that one you got to pay like exorbitant amounts for. I think the other one don't. Like we still have to pay for ambulances here in Canada. I mean, based on the province you live in, it might be a little bit different. But when, I had a complication with my pregnancy, um, and I called the ambulance, it was $80. So, like, I remember sharing it, and everybody, all of my American friends and family were like, "What the hell? Like, I paid 1,400 when I had to,
Yeah.
you know?" And that's just for the ride. So,
Oh yeah. Well, this I guess this is kind of along the same lines. I was watching your comments during the vice presidential debates, and I was just curious what you all up there, our neighbors to the north there, what you think of what's happening here in the United States, politically with the election and everything. How does it look to a sort of an outsider, right?
yeah, I like it's hard to say because over the years I've become pretty invested in politics and so I do watch quite a bit. But if I talk about it with my coworkers, like they just think Trump is a whack job, and that's kind of what it comes down to. I usually try to discuss more like it's not to me it's not just about Trump. It's about the things that got us to the point of electing Trump, right?
Hmm.
And so I don't like to say, all Americans are crazy and are freedom loving, like, just gun-toting freedom lovers. Like, it's just the stereotype of who Americans are. I don't buy that personally. I think it's pretty obvious that most Americans are not fans of the man. And so I think it's just I feel like America is just a country that's just so saturated with, media and entertainment and just kind of lies spun, and so these people just buy into what is considered American, and like people keep voting out of their own best interests in terms of healthcare. People don't understand that it's not like socialized healthcare. Like it's good for you. Like I get a year off after having a kid. I'm a type 1 diabetic and I don't worry about how I'm going to live the next month. Like I use a cartridge of insulin every week and I don't have to worry about how I'm supposed to pay for that. You know, I it just it's just crazy to me that people seem to think that the American way of doing things is always the best way. And I think a lot of, Americans don't really understand how other systems work because the lie has been fed so well. Like a lot of Americans are just so gaslit into believing that this is the only system that's going to work. It's the only way. You just have to work harder. Just work harder and you'll get by. You might live the dream, right? Because I think that's what it's about. It's about going to America and working your way up to your dream life. Like that's the lie of what America is. Like wasn't it George Carlin had a quote about that, about the American dream, and you have to be asleep to believe it. That that's basically what America is.
Yeah, I think that the United States um, benefited greatly after World War II because the war wasn't really fought on American soil. So the United States was able to kind of jump ahead economically while other countries rebuilt.
Mm-hmm.
And that, and I think also we had a healthy union system. We had lots of
Yeah.
unions.
And
And
everything was done for working families.
yeah,
There there were initiatives made by the government for families to thrive after the war. And then over time it's just become more about supporting the corporations and building up the corporations than it is about building up the working class. And so it's funny because I remember like through my Facebook memories we had our 2015 um federal election here in Canada. It was, you get so sick of hearing the same talking points over and over. Like I'm sure it's the same for you guys because you spend a year and a half in an election cycle. Like we had our election was what, like 35 days or something in 2015, and that was one of our longest ones. But it was just so the conservative talking point was putting money back in Canadians' pockets. The liberal talking point was supporting the middle class. And our NDP, like more, I guess, socialist leaning, not quite socialist, but our most leftist party, their talking point was, $15 a day daycare. So parents can put their kids in daycare and work and, earn a living. And those were the talking points that we heard consistently that year. And the American talking points, like what the hell are they? It's, make America great again. Just what does that even mean?
mhm.
And then I don't even the Democrats they don't really have anything. They don't have any talking points. They're
Their
just
their
we're not Trump. That's basically it. So
their
there's
well,
no
their slogan is "Build Back Better."
oh
I don't even
right. Yeah, like
I don't
what
know what the hell that
it's
means.
all just like it's all just platitudes. And so I feel like it's just kind of looking at what our election was and what the parties tried to present to Canadians to say like this is the reason why you should vote for us. This is what we're going to do for you, the voters. Whereas the American parties don't. They're just like just vote for us. Just vote for us this time. Cuz you guys only have like two parties that can realistically form government. Technically we do too, but it's just at least our elections are still a little bit more focused on the people than they are about, just platitudes. And I feel like at least as an outsider looking into American politics, a lot of it is just platitudes. And that's it.
Well, they've duped us into we're headed for a one-party system, and there's a couple other words for a one-party system. I'm not
Hmm.
going to say what they are, but one of these parties is going to wipe out the other party. Um, and I've since 1996, I've voted for an independent candidate.
Hmm.
I'm always told by everybody that I'm helping the bad guys by doing that, that I'm throwing my vote away.
Oh yeah.
They always say now's not the time for the third party. They've been saying that for 30 some odd years
I
now.
know, and then it just gets worse and worse because they just keep, you know, lying to you even more.
Well, yeah, you're right. The selection between the two-headed monster, the Republicans and the Democrats,
It's not all that
it
different. It's not that much of a difference.
well, and it becomes progressively more and more distasteful. I mean, this time around, it's basically the grumpy old guy, your drunk uncle versus Mr. Magoo.
Hmm.
Like, that's not really a choice, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
No, it's not.
Uh, and I'm not a huge fan of Hillary Clinton, but in 2016, like if I were hiring for a job and I looked at her resume and I looked at Trump's resume, like Trump wouldn't even get an interview.
Yeah.
Like if I was interviewing for the job of president, like who's qualified?
Hmm.
But her public image had been so thoroughly damaged by the media, and I'm sure by conservatives, um, that it's weird. She wasn't able to just say, "I'm the one who's qualified for the job." Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's because of what she represented. Like, I think obviously some of it was misogyny to a degree, but I think it was what she represented. And because Trump ran from a very populist angle, he did speak for the people in 2016. He did. He's like, you guys, you're losing your jobs. I'll bring your jobs back. Like, it was all very, very blunt, very blanketing kind of statements. But because, most Americans probably don't engage in politics to a degree that they would understand, like, well, what does he really mean? What is he gonna do? What's he gonna change? How is he gonna do these things? They didn't think that. It was just because he said, you're struggling. They were like, yes, finally, somebody's acknowledging that. And so they voted for him. And because he was on The Apprentice, he was on TV, he's a recognizable figure. That was why they voted for him, and that was all it took. And so I think it's tougher for him this time because he can't pretend to be leftist. He didn't govern as a leftist. He didn't govern as a populist. He didn't do any of the things he promised to do. And obviously he has his little cult fan base, but I think general people, everyday people, like at least from what I've seen of, you know, people like me, working moms, just suburban moms, they looked at the way he responded to the COVID thing. They looked at the way he he looked at, the whole treatment of the Mexican immigrants and all that. And they didn't like that. And so like they're turning away from him. And he doesn't have the same campaign to stand on this time around because he is the government. He campaigned as the anti-establishment guy in 2016, and now he is the guy in power. So he keeps blaming Joe Biden, he keeps blaming Obama, but he's been the guy in power for the last 4 years. So he doesn't have that same momentum that he had in 2016. And I think that that's obviously showing that, Joe Biden has a lead in a lot of the states now. Um, Even though he's pretty lackluster. Like Joe Biden's just super lackluster. He doesn't have anything to offer.
It's pretty sad.
it's so sad. And like even last night's debate, I was like, I actually kind of like Joe Biden. And the whole thing when they were like going after Hunter Biden, I think at least for me, because Hunter Biden had issues with addiction, and they found his tweets, or no, it was the text messages that Hunter Biden sent to Joe Biden, and Joe Biden was like, "Oh, my beautiful son," like that's a human issue and a human moment. And I feel like everyday people would look at that, who have family members who are suffering from addiction, would look at that and be like, "Why are you trying to trash Joe Biden this way? Like this, I know what this is like." So I think that that's just a really poor tactic from the Republicans to just use kind of like salacious stuff like that is a very human, like deep issue, to try to make it seem that Joe Biden's a bad guy because his son is a drug addict. Like, my gosh, that's crazy.
Well, it's not like Trump has never done any cocaine. Let's be
Oh,
honest.
no, he doesn't do cocaine at all. Doesn't seem
Oh,
like it.
actually, you know what? I don't think that he does. I no, I think that
The
his
Sudafed, he gets like the European Sudafed or something because it's got the extra stuff in it. Gives it more of a kick.
well, I thought his brother didn't he have a brother who died from alcoholism
Yeah,
and
he had a brother that died like recently over the summer, but they didn't specify why. So some people speculated it was COVID.
no, he had another brother many years ago who died
Okay.
from some kind of substance abuse problem, I think. And I think that he stays away from that stuff because of that.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. Who knows? I mean, the guy was, a jet setter or whatever in the 1980s, and it seems like if that was your profession, like it came with a satchel full of cocaine just as part of the job.
I mean, it was like the 80s, right? It was a
Yeah.
whole deal.
You can look. I said this already on Twitter today. You can look at the hairstyles of like the Thompson twins and Flock of Seagulls, and you know that lots of people were doing cocaine and weren't really paying attention to the finer details, like having a rational haircut. You know. Anyway, before we finish up here, can you tell us what you are working on at the moment and what we can expect from you in the future in terms of your writing?
Um, well, hopefully a novel, which is kind of I want to call it like a slow burn kind of psychological horror about becoming a mother and how it affects you personally and how it affects your friendships. It is a very kind of female focused story, but it definitely relates a lot to, my experience when I had my daughter, well, 5 years ago now. I went through some postpartum depression, so there's a lot of that kind of stuff in there. So that's the novel that I'm querying right now. So hopefully I can get it published somewhere. And then I wrote a novella this summer that I hope to publish in January if I can get back to it and get editing and stuff like that. I'm probably just going to self-publish it for the sake of having a book out there. And then next year I plan on writing my second novel, which would be kind of like another psychological horror about multi-level marketing. And so, yeah, it's good. I love anti-MLM videos. That's kind of like my new thing. So I've been, it's gonna be a horror about the female dynamics within multi-level marketing and that kind of stuff and the culty aspects of it and everything. So I'm excited.
Do you mind my asking your novella? What's the genre? What are you working
It's
with
kind
there?
of it's hard to define. It's kind of, I don't know. It's just more of a literary kind of look at. It's about a woman who loses her mother and she ends up becoming a character in the MLM thing, the protagonist in that. So it's kind of just my backstory on it, but it is kind of like an erotic sort of I guess personal novel. I don't really know how to define it. I just wrote it back in August. And so yeah, it'll be kind of like a literary erotic sort of novella. Yeah.
Okay, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, I would like to thank you for joining us today here on
Yeah, no, that was
ACTV.
fun. Mostly political, but that's always fun for me to talk about.
Yeah, that's okay. Whatever, whatever, wherever the conversation goes,
Oh
that's
yeah.
it's fine. Okay, and everybody out there, make sure that you look for Rebecca's work and read it, so that I don't have to visit you and reprimand. Uh, anyway.
Yeah, I always update my blog at RebeccaJones-Howe.com. So I write personal
Ah,
stuff. I write about writing and I do like critical VC Andrews reviews from like an adult woman perspective. So yeah.
okay, yeah, thank you. See,
Yeah.
this is the first interview. That's a question I should have asked, is like what links and whatnot you have. Is there anything else you want to direct us to on the internet?
Not really. Like everything's on my website. I do have a Patreon. Like I don't really update it so much anymore because it was kind of an experiment I did this year. But I mean, if you want to give me $2 a month because you like my writing, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Rebecca, thank you for talking to us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.